right, my friends, welcome back to the Reisinger Build in partnership with our friends at Builders FirstSource. This has been a really fun project, and I hope you've enjoyed following along in the progress. You know, we've filmed from foundation all the way to today, which is the siding episode. We've got a beautiful James Hardie package on this house, and we've got a lot of really interesting and maybe a little bit different details, plus a lot of really good prep that goes into a high performance house that's kind of hidden once the siding is going on. So we're gonna spend quite a bit of time on pre-siding, siding, details. It's gonna be really good, guys. Today at the Reisinger Build, all about siding in partnership with our friends at James Hardie. Let's get going.
A Build Original Series in partnership with Builders FirstSource. The Reisinger Build.
All right, so let me catch you up to speed a little bit. A lot of prep goes on before the James Hardie package goes on. If you haven't seen our prior episodes, we use zip system sheathing on this job as our water resistive barrier, our WRB. That's our last line of defense for both water and air. Check out our other episodes so you can see all the details on that. But once the zip is up, there's quite a bit of work that happens to get us ready here. Also, because we did a monopoly framing on this house, so we actually did a little bit of the quote unquote siding ahead of time. You're gonna notice that I've got my Hardie fascia and my Hardie vented soffit and my brick frieze up already as we start this video. The crew did a terrific job, and we can actually walk over. Let's do that real quick. Let's walk over and see a couple of those details, because I actually left a piece of the vented soffit off here at the front door so that when people come for Build Show Live, they can kind of see it. But this gives you a good taste for what we're doing here. All that framing we typically refer to as the cornice framing on the outside of the house. It's really almost exterior finish carpentry if you look at some of these details. But what you're seeing is that we lagged that through the zip system sheathing to form that soffit area. And then we took the ventilation 2x that were on top of our insulation on this job and formed our fascia. We've got a sub fascia back there. If you look up underneath the soffit here, you can see I've got a 2x that forms our sub fascia, and that's where we're actually nailing our Hardie material to. Now that's a 1x8 fascia. That's gonna receive our gutter on the front of the house later. And then I've got a ventilated, just a standard 2-foot Hardie soffit. I really like that. Now, one thing you're gonna notice in the front of the house is the framers did a nice job prepping for brick by putting that pocket in place. All they do is they put the soffit on first, they nail on a 2x2, and then that Hardie 1x4 goes on there. So that now we've got a pocket for the mason to slide his brick up into. And you'll notice I've also got a brick lug here. We basically have a brick front here. Now, something that we're doing on the whole house, not just the brick area, is we're doing a trim detail on the windows. We originally talked about doing this all out of Hardie 1x material, but at the last minute, my architect made a bit of a change, totally fine. Chelsea, who's working with Steve on this project, said, you know, I'd like to do something a little thinner on the windows. So what we ended up doing was a cedar 2x4 that we ripped on the job to 3 inches. And then we made this rabbited detail with the table saw. It's not actually a rabbet, we didn't use a router. But what you're seeing here is this full thickness is 1.5 inches. It's just a standard cedar 2x4. And then we ran it through the table saw once on the flat and then once vertically to form this rabbet. Now, the sill, on the other hand, though, is pitched. And if you look at the side here, you can see I've got about a 5-degree bevel on this jam material, and that allows me to pitch the sill. And then if you come underneath here, you're gonna notice that I've got a kerf cut on the sill as well. That's an old detail. As that water runs down the sill, we wanna break that surface tension and have that drip off. Now, because we're using cedar though, we wanna make sure it's pre-primed on all sides. You're gonna notice all these ends, even the cut ends like this, have all been primed. So the guys did a real nice job of assembling the parts right here on the front of the house on a table, priming everything, making sure everything was ready to go, screwing those together, and then dropping them in like a picture frame. Next, let's talk about this material that you see the guys actually putting up kind of behind me right now. And I'm gonna walk over where we started our siding so you can kind of see what's happening. This is a zip system Rainscreen. If you're not familiar with this product, it's basically a dimple mat on one side. It has a 3D plastic mesh type material that is never going to crush against the house, it's always going to maintain a 1/4 inch air gap. It's hard to believe as I put my hands in there, but that material is going to continue to allow air and drainage behind the siding for the life of the house. And even putting this Hardie on won't crush it. On the face here is a WRB. This is a, actually, I don't know what the material is, some type of synthetic material that has a perm rating that's going to act as a secondary WRB. Now, I don't necessarily need that for this job. I've got fiber cement siding going on, but if I had brick, like on the front of the house, we'll be running this before the brick, especially if I had stucco or rock, this is really cool because it doesn't allow this to get clogged. Now back to the siding though. I'm a big fan of going best practice methods for installing siding. So I really like an air gap behind there. The manufacturer, James Hardie, will tell you don't have to do that. The material is not going to break down. That's one of the things I love about fiber cement is that it's such a bomber long-term material. But for best drainage, for best durability on the house, we want some type of an air gap. And that's why I like this Zip System Rainscreen product. Very easy to install, very straightforward. And frankly, it's a budget savings compared to nailing up one buys like you may have seen me do on other houses, including my own when I put my James Hardie package on. I've got a little test though that I want to show you on how well this drains and dries. So let me grab a ladder. Let's show you how well this works. Okay, y'all, here's the test. I got a little ladder set up here. And this is some just blue dyed water, just some food coloring, just to make it a little more clear what we're doing here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this Rainscreen back and we're going to pour it out and see how it does. Will it drain at the bottom or will it get caught and take a long time to drain? Are you ready? Okay, here we go. We are pouring. Oh yeah, baby. Hey, look at that. Perfect. So look at the water coming out from that head flashing, which is flashed all the way back to the zip system. And then see all that dripping that's coming out at the bottom? That shows that that Rainscreen is really working. It did its job. It's moving that water quickly out of the cavity. And then if it was a little bit bigger, it would drain quicker. 1/4 inch is enough to drain and dry. But if you really are in a coastal environment, if you're in an environment that gets tons of water, like, you know, you're in Seattle, you're in Portland, you're in a place like that, you might consider going thicker on your Rainscreen. You know, I typically say a Rainscreen is necessary for anybody who gets 20 inches or more a year of rain. So that's kind of my litmus test. Here in Austin, we get like 35 inches a year, so a Rainscreen is really important to me. There are places that get more than that, and there are places that get a 1/4 inch a day, every day, all winter long. But a Rainscreen is really vital. All right, guys, day 2, we're back, and I got my buddy Dave with me. Dave, thanks for joining me.
Great, glad to be here.
Dave Johnson, my local Hardie rep. I got to tell you, Dave, I've known you for probably 15 years now, and I actually met Dave when I was doing this type of siding as well. This is Hardie Artisan. Pretty cool, isn't it, Dave?
It's great product for us, high end, kind of our design series.
It sure is, and this corner right here is the money shot right here, isn't it, Dave? Looks
Deep
fantastic.
shadow lines, yep. Resonates really well with the design community. Very high end look, smooth board, and really glad you guys decided to use it on your house.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. So let's talk about this product in particular, and then Hardie in general. Here's a cut piece, off-cut piece we can see. It's pretty thick, isn't it, Dave? What's our total thickness here?
5/8.
Okay, so this is 5/8, and you can see we can actually put it on our 12-inch miter box to get that miter. Give us a couple tips and tricks though. You know, the guys, as they were doing this, you gave us a couple tricks, and I got to tell you, this corner looks fantastic. Look at that.
So compound miter cut, 6 and 45 on the 7 1/4 board.
Okay.
It could be around that depending on the plumb of the wall.
Yep.
But the key here is that you always want to back caulk this at the miter as it comes together.
As you go.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So that's probably the biggest thing on the miters, nails.
So as they're back caulking, just to clarify that as people know, is they'll put, let's say if this board went in first, they're putting a big bead of big stretch in there, a latex-based, fantastic caulking. And then as the next board comes in, there's a little bit of squeeze out. You saw me kind of cleaning it up with my fingers here. There's just a little bit of squeeze out, and now that caulking's all the way back in there,
Right.
and that's gonna last a long, long time. You don't wanna leave that open for the painters to do later. That needs to be done as we're doing the siding. So a couple details that I wanna mention here. This is actually a 6-inch exposure, and as we get into the corners, there's two options. You could either, I call them a woven corner, but it's really a mitered corner, right, to do an inside corner, or you could do an inside corner board. We've actually done a little bit of both on this house. In some places that aren't really visible, we're doing a 2x2 out of the same material we use for our window bucks. But Dave, talk to us about mitering that inside corner as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the reverse of, what you're doing here. You can actually even do your one side and then the other one will match into it just fine and just work your way up the wall so you're not having to try to do an inside miter on each one.
Yeah.
But you can butt it in and then the next piece as you go up will match that angle.
Yep.
And that'll give you that look.
Yeah, I like it.
So, yeah.
Let's switch gears for a minute and talk about what this is made from. I use an analogy that I don't know if you guys will like, but I'm curious. I'm going to throw it out for you, Dave. I didn't pre-plan with this one, so let's see what Dave says of this. Over the years, I've used a lot of Hardie. It's a fiber cement product. It's made with cement, and the analogy I like to tell my customers over the years is, have you ever, or actually this is really more of a builder analogy, have you ever spilled paint on your sidewalk? It's incredibly difficult to get paint that's been spilled off a sidewalk because that concrete just really soaks it up. And I've found for me that when I'm doing Hardie siding, when we paint that paint job lasts at least twice as long compared to, let's say, a wood siding or other sidings out there, because it just absolutely soaks the paint up. Does that give you any heartburn with that analogy?
No,
Dave?
that's great. And I think that the thing is, this board actually does come primed, a primer specific for fiber cement.
Okay.
And so you're going to get excellent adherence on there.
One thing that I want you to notice, though, is that as the guys are butting those boards together, we are not caulking those butt joints. Let's actually walk around the corner. You can see one of those real quick here. Like where these lap pieces are coming together, we're butting those tight. Just a light pressure, isn't that correct, Dave?
Yeah, yeah.
Light pressure on there. We're also putting a flashing back there to kick any water out. And that's gonna make that caulking unnecessary, right? We're gonna kick any water that happens to get into those butt joints straight out. And so here, this butt joint, there's no caulking on here. We'd wanna make sure the painter doesn't caulk that. You might get some flashing, meaning you might see a little bit of a difference in sheen between the fiber cement and the face of that caulking. So we're not caulking those butt joints. It also means, in my estimation, that this paint job's gonna last a long time. Most of my Hardie jobs in the past have gone at least a decade before they need repainted, some even more. And then a couple other details I want to mention on this wall while we're here. You can see all those flashings right there. That happened to be one I just found on Amazon. It's basically a piece of house wrap with a gray color on it, so it kind of disappears behind there. But you could use metal in there as well, right, Dave?
Yeah, anything that's impervious to water and won't bleed is fine.
Won't bleed, that's a good point.
Yeah. One of the other things I want to point out that this crew is doing a really good job on is they're trying to use factory ends in the field because, right, that would already be primed.
Yep.
And so they're doing, and it's a pretty, square cut.
That's a great point.
We're doing that. The other thing they're doing is when they do the butt joint, they'll nail from the butt joint out. And so from the butt joint, so you don't end up with compression back. So
that's a great point.
Yeah.
So start at the butt joint nailing and then move the other direction.
Right, move out from there.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Now, mounting blocks, always a bit of a hassle for builders out there. We chose to go with the same cedar material we use for this window buck. I mentioned it earlier in the video, Dave, but I wanted these windows to be able to be replaced easily in the future, and I know this Hardie is going to last a long, long time. So, 40, 50 years from now, if someone wants to change this window, I didn't want to mess with my siding. I wanted to be able to leave that siding in place. So we're face screwing these, and I'm going to tell the painters not to caulk these face screws. I know this is a little bit controversial out there, but I like seeing those screws. I did that at my personal house as well, and there's that certain amount of remodelability built-in forgiveness to say, hey, the next person who messes with this house a couple decades from now, I guarantee you they're going to thank us that we didn't caulk these in, and then this whole trim could pop right out. Plus, if this trim were to have a problem, let's say a sprinkler head hits this trim every night and we don't realize it, it starts having a problem in a decade or two, we could pop it off and replace it. My Hardie's gonna be in good shape still. We also made that same cedar for our mounting blocks. So you can see I've got like a little 4-inch, I think that's a bathroom vent coming out right there. We put a head flashing on that. I do want to mention though, on our windows, we put a window head flashing that's taped back to the zip system sheathing, but then the flashing that's over top of the trim is really just to protect this trim piece right here. It's not actually flashed back to the zip system sheathing. And remember that test that we did earlier in the video, that test really showed, hey, water that gets back there is going to be kicked to the outside. And that's exactly what we want. Speaking of which, to make that Rainscreen detail really work, as we get up to this gable up here, you're going to notice that the crew is going to put a spacer in as they come up to that Hardie soffit to space off the Hardie Artisan siding by about somewhere around a 3/8 of an inch, maybe a quarter, maybe a half, with the idea being, Dave, that our Rainscreen, which is vented at the bottom, will also have a vent space at the top. Any comments on that or anything to mention on that?
Great system.
That's a good
Love
detail.
It. I mean,
it's not necessarily required by James Hardie, but it is a best practice for all my builder friends out there. And I think I said it earlier, but let me repeat myself even if I didn't. If you're in a climate that gets 20 inches of rain or more, it's really best practice to use a Rainscreen. If you're in the desert, you may not need it, but if you have 20 inches or more, definitely do a Rainscreen. And the rainier your climate, the more forgiveness you want in the system, the bigger the gap. So this is a 1/4 inch gap. That'll work just fine for my climate. If you're in Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, that's even rainier, go up to a bigger gap. You want a 3/4 inch gap is going to be your best practice on a Rainscreen. And of course you can use that gap anywhere that's going to work. One other minor detail, as we get to the top of the wall and that Rainscreen material from zip comes up to the top, we're cutting that back by about 1 inch. And then we're painting that black just to make sure nobody can see anything back there in some random light. And I'm going to tell the painters not to caulk that. Obviously, that's going to be enough of a gap. They should realize that, but we always want to confirm with that. Any other details that we need to mention right now, or should we let these guys get back to work?
Well, I don't think any details on the install. One thing to mention is 30-year non-prorated warranty.
That's right.
Right,
Yeah.
so covering manufacturing defects, that means that year 30, if the manufacturing defect, we're still covering 100% of the cost. So that's a big deal for us. We're also the only siding product that is manufactured for the climate that it's installed in.
That's right. You guys make a climate-specific product.
Right. So ours in the south, or HZ10, would be high heat, high humidity, high UV.
I like it.
And then HZ5, kind of freeze-thaw environments, is what we call HZ5, is more around freeze-thaw, and they have some more strict details on clearances, flashings, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah, but that's...
Another thing to mention too, we're not using it on this job, but I saw this at the International Builder Show, and you can see it obviously in their catalog. They make a couple of other profiles on this Hardie Artisan siding. So we're using the lap siding, and ours is the 7 1/4 with a 6 inch. They make a wider version of this same siding that would actually have a 7 inch exposure, but they've got a couple of other profiles that are a little bit more modern. This house, this neighborhood, a little more traditional, but if you're looking for a more modern look, shiplap, V-groove, and square channel all available. We can still miter those, right, Dave?
You bet.
And we can also run those vertically, correct?
That's right, yeah.
I did a similar profile to the square channel vertical from you guys on my front porch, and I love how it turned out. A couple years later, still looks perfect.
Right, yep. Great product, great line.
For sure.
So.
We got a bunch more details that I want to point out. Let's let the crew get back to work. We've paused them for a minute while we shot the video. So let's keep going on this, and we will come back and show you a couple more details. Hey y'all, start of day 3 on the Hardie Artisan siding we're doing over here. We're making great progress, as you can see. I mean, check out that sidewall behind me. It's looking fantastic over here. I want to point out a couple details, like the starter strip on the roof and where we've got a porch soffit. So let's go check out a couple details. Okay, I'm up on the scaffold here outside of this porch. We've got one detail here on the Hardie that's a real special one that I think is worth mentioning. We've got a soffit right here. You can see there's about a, I don't know, foot or so in the inside. And we're going to be using a 5/4 by 10 piece here on the flat so that you don't look up and see the bottom. So we got a flashing made that we're going to put in behind this Rainscreen and actually tape to the zip. That will be a kick out flashing. Any water that comes down there we want to kick out. So we're going to nail this up, tape it, and then my 1 by 10, it's basically a 5/4 by 10, will come out to here, and then our siding will continue. So let's let the guys get back to work. We'll show you what's going on, but I wanted to at least kind of demonstrate what's happening here so when you see it later, you'll understand the layers. All right, here's a detail I want to review with you. We're on the second floor here, and the starter strip where this Hardie is hitting the roof right here, you're going to notice the ventilation mat is sticking out. We wanted that starter strip to be over the ventilation mat, and then we'll just take a knife and cut this off so that now that 1/4 inch air gap, when I stop my Hardie here, I need a 1 inch gap between the bottom of my Hardie and the finished roof surface. Now I'm going to have some airflow behind that Hardie, and then when we get to the top of the wall, like everywhere else, we'll stop it about a 1/2 inch short at the top here, so I've got airflow at the top and the bottom. It's really important when you got rain screens to get that airflow up and out, just like we're doing here. This vent right here is venting on my over roof all the way to my ridge. It's real important to get that airflow. Just thought I'd point that out real quick before we kept going here. Okay, y'all, painter starts tomorrow actually on this job because the carpenters are finished. Man, absolutely love it. The deep shadow lines, the mitered corners, I mean, looks really, really good. I do want to make one note for you. I went around yesterday with the painter when he was looking at the house to start and figure out what he needed. And I put some Post-it notes around. I used some Post-it note extremes and said, hey, caulk this or don't caulk that. And I think that's a really good idea to really make sure the communication is there. You know, when we get to a butt joint on a seam, we don't want to caulk that, right? The carpenters didn't put caulking in there as it butted. It doesn't need to be caulked. You want to make sure that the painters aren't caulking that, frankly. And I've seen this before. I'm sure you know this. You're not going to caulk this seam here either, right? That's a mistake. You don't want to do that. It's not called for. Frankly, if you do it, you're going to have to re-caulk it for the life of your project. And you want moisture to get out of there. Whether you have a rain screen install or not, this lap right here in the Hardie does not need caulk. So guys, use a really high quality caulk like Big Stretch. I want to make mention that where the wall hits the soffit, we intentionally spray painted that black. I think I said this earlier in the episode. And so when my painter comes, I told him we want to get a 1/2 inch or a 5/8 backer rod. We're going to shove that backer rod in there and not caulk it, with the express idea of after he's done spraying the house, he's actually going to pull that backer rod out of that joint, and then he still has that nice black line and we've got airflow. On 3/4 of the house, remember we have that zip system rain screen, which gives us about a 1/4 inch gap behind here. We want that gap to have some ventilation and airflow and drainage. On the other hand, this back corner of the house where I am now, we actually have a 3/4 inch rain screen. This is what I did when I built my personal house. The bigger the gap, the better. So I really like this 3/4 inch air gap. It means that any water that gets in there can harmlessly fall out, and we've got even better airflow. Now, one detail that I did here that I also did in my house and I want to point out is if you look up, the 1x4 battens went on first, and then the 2x4 ledger that forms the soffit area was added, which means that now that I've got my bug screen down here on the bottom, if you feel that or look up here, you'd see I've got my bug screen. Now I've got that airflow all the way through the top, or all the way to the top, and then out that vented Hardie. And that vented Hardie soffit on this particular house, check out our other episode on our over roof detail, is also ventilating on top of my rooftop foam. Now I know this is a siding episode, but go check that episode out as well. The last thing that I want to point out is my carpenters made mounting blocks for all of my penetrations here. This is my HVAC line set. Got a disconnect switch here for my AC. This is a condensate drain that will get connected up. We made those out of cedar and butted them. And then this head flashing that's here is really just into the Rainscreen so that water that's running down the face will come to the outside of those mounting blocks. That's really best practice, is having a head flashing on all those locations. And I think I said this earlier in the video, but just to clarify, the same thing's happening above the windows. It's kind of hard to tell, and I think I mentioned it earlier in the video, but the head flashings on the windows, we have a black head flashing that went right on the window, and that's flashed all the way back to the zip system sheathing. But then the stainless head flashing, which by the way, I put a note to the painter, it's right over here, don't paint this, leave this bare stainless. I think that'll look nice even with a painted Hardie. That is actually just underneath the lap siding. And so literally water that's just running down the face is gonna be able to come out there. All it's doing is protecting the cedar and kicking water that may be running down out to the face of the window so it's not getting behind there. Guys, really appreciate you hanging with me. I know this is a long episode. We got into a lot of nerdy details. By the way, this section here we left off on purpose. It's not that we didn't finish. This is being left open for our big show. We've got the Build Show Live conference here in November 7th, 8th, and 9th. Our friends at Builders FirstSource have a big booth there and are gonna be in this house for the home tours. James Hardie has a big booth, so come see those guys. Come meet Dave, my local Hardie rep, and get a tour of this house, and he's gonna walk you through some details. And you'll also be able to see that this whole section's open. You know, you can see those little bearskin flashings that I put there to kick out the water. You'll be able to look and see all the details on this soffit that we left open. We purposely did this so that you guys could really understand the complexities and the details of putting all this together. And I really wanted you guys to feel like, you know, this is really doable. You know, maybe you haven't done a higher performance house before, but seeing these details, watching this video series, we're really trying to pass down that knowledge to you so you could feel like, oh yeah, this is totally doable. Guys, big thanks to James Hardie for sponsoring today's video, and of course Builders FirstSource for being our overall sponsor. Two terrific companies. I have 2 decades of experience with Hardie siding, working, lasting, holding paint for a really long time, being super durable both in the north when I use them and in the south in the heat where I've used them. So this is a terrific company, and I expect this exterior to be here, gosh, a lifetime from now. This is really a top-notch install that's gonna last. With that being said, guys, check out the other episodes, and I'll see you next time on the Reisinger Build.